Hey, this is Scott from phasingplayer.com, and today I've got a little something different that I'm gonna be doing. Normally, I write kind of bullet-pointed scripts for the videos that I put together, but today is more free-form. It's just kind of off the top of my head. See, I recently played Cole Wehrle's and Infamous Traffic for the first time. It's a game that I put together. It's a print-and-play copy from Hollandspiele. And I actually didn't intend to play it when I made it, which is a little weird. I understand. I was also a little bit weirded out about that. I did this a few months back, maybe 6 months ago. I was relatively new to print and plays, especially purchasing them officially, supported print and play from a publisher. I had made fan designed print and plays in the past. Not very well, mind you, but I was curious to see what a high quality official print and play could look like. And so I was into Cole Wehrle at the time, still am for the record. That's not some slight against Root as his latest game. I like Root a lot, but an Infamous Traffic was the only game of his that I hadn't played at that time. I was really not familiar with it at all. The pictures made it look a little maybe simpler than his other games that I had played, Pax Pamir, John Company. And Infamous Traffic has a map. It's got a small number of cardboard chits, counters, and some dice, and that's pretty much it. So it kind of flew under my radar, but when I was interested in making a print and play, my head went back to it, and I saw it was available for like 13 or 15, I think it's $15. And so I purchased it. I printed it up, bought a box from a hobby store, and it sat on my shelf. I made it. It turned out it was very easy to put together. For anyone curious about doing the print and play for an Infamous Traffic, it was super, super easy. It took me an afternoon, if that, to put together. And then it sat on my shelf. Sort of by design. I didn't try to play it. I didn't ask any of my buddies to play it. They saw it on my shelf and said, what's this new game you have? I told them and said, we've just learned some new games recently. I'm not pushing to learn another one right now. Don't worry about it. So it sat there for months. And recently, something got into my head that I wanted to try it out. I decided I finally wanted to try out an Infamous Traffic. I think I saw somebody say online that it was a surprisingly simple game. And that kind of caught my attention because I love complex games. I do. Some of my favorite games are very complex. Pax Pamir is pretty complex. John Company is super complex, super opaque. And the idea that kind of the in-between of Pax Pamir and John Company was a simpler game, sort of mechanically, caught my interest finally. So a few days ago, myself and 3 of my friends got together and we played a 3-player game of it. And I thought it was awesome. I thought I was actually sort of blown away. It might have jumped up. I don't like to review games before I play them a handful of times. I've only played this once, but I think of all the Cole Wehrle games I've played, this has the best first impression. It was super engaging for all of us. And I just wanted a chance to talk a little bit about it. So I know I said this is more freeform, but I am going to shoot some B-roll of the game that you are probably looking at right now. And I think it's a good-looking game. I think it looks cool. As far as pieces go, like I said, it's not that much. I fit all the counters here in a GMT counter tray, and it's got some dice. I had some D6s lying around that I used. It was very, very easy to put together. The map, too, was very straightforward, very easy to put together. And yeah, so I want to note a few things that I like about this game. I just want a chance to talk about it, with whoever will listen. Some things that I really liked, first impression, was it was really mechanically simple. You only have a few actions you can do in your turn. You can invest in an enterprise, either opium, fleets, or merchants. You can invest in one of those 3, and all that is doing is taking one counter from your supply and placing it into your holdings, where it is then available for use in the game. sort of not in the game until it's in your holdings, and then it starts to count. You may also take a counter from your holdings and put it into a supply chain in China, in one of the designated areas in China. Depending on what you're placing, it'll either go in the water or on land or in a space for opium, sort of a nebulous area. And you may also take this kind of a pool of counters distributed on the top of the board, and you can place some of those into the map as well with an action. And for the most part, that's all you really do on your turn. And in fact, on your turn, you only do one of those things, so the second thing that I noticed about this game is it books. It feels like there's almost no downtime. You only take one action on your turn. Then it moves on to the next player, either clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on what the token that dictates that says. It can change. Players can change that in the game. So you take an action, the player next to you takes an action, then the next player, and the next player, and suddenly it's back to you. Because you're only taking a single action in a turn, it gets back to you pretty dang quick, which is cool. A lot of heavy, thinky games, I feel like usually have a lot of, I don't want to say downtime, because that makes it sound like there's nothing to do, and in a lot of these games, when it's not your turn, you can be thinking about what you're going to do on your turn. So downtime I don't think is the right word, but times when you are not the phasing player, which it's not me plugging myself. I'm not trying to plug my own channel with that. If you're watching this, I probably don't need to plug my channel. But if in an Infamous Traffic, there's not a whole lot of time to stop and think about your turn. It gets back to you and suddenly you're on the, it's your time to go, you're on the chopping block. And so I thought that was great. I thought that was really cool, only doing one thing and then moving on. Which also contributed to my third point, my third positive takeaway from this game, on my first impression. This game is quick overall. The playtime for us to open the box, set it up, learn how to play, and come to a conclusion took us about 2 hours. Actually, it's almost exactly 2 hours. Which for a first time for a pretty, a decently heavy game, that was great. That was fantastic. I could see this game, the box time says 45 to 90 minutes. I don't ever really trust what box times say. I think, I don't have it on hand, it's over there, but I think Diplomacy says something like 3 hours of playtime, and I don't know that I've ever finished a game of that in under like 8. So I don't really trust box time estimates. But I could totally see an Infamous Traffic taking 90 minutes to play, or even an hour to play. There were a couple times in this game where so you win the game by having the most victory points after the fourth turn has concluded. However, the game can end earlier if all of the dice in the dice pool are gone, which represents Chinese Revolution, and the game ends immediately and you calculate victory in a different way. There were a couple of times in turn 2, and again, we're new players, so maybe this changes, but there were times when Chinese Revolution was imminent. On turn 2 of the game, about 25, 30 minutes into this game, there was one die left, I think, in that the dice pool. And it turned into this like rally to try to stop China from revolting. Because we saw who would win based on that, so the other 3 players fought to stop that from happening, and we succeeded. Though the game did ultimately end with Chinese Revolution, but it was in the 4th turn. And so, yeah, I'm really impressed by how fast this game can move, overall and turn to turn. Another thing that was really neat about this game, 4th point I'm gonna make here, is the theme. The theme of it's cool. Now, I'm usually not someone that is super theme focused when it comes to games. I like mechanics. But I thought that the theme in this of us all playing kind of, a bunch of wieners from England trying to exploit the Chinese people to make opium dollars was powerful. It was a great theme. You feel like a real heel when you're playing this. And the kind of connection for getting opium into a supply chain, having a ship there to get it into the Chinese port, having smugglers there to sneak it into the mainland and having merchants to sell it, Even though they're just little cardboard squares on a track, I thought that it felt super personal and super engaging in that way. And so this theme really spoke to me. Really, not as like I like a poppy seed bagel now and again, but I thought this theme really came through, and it's something I've been thinking about more. And I really enjoyed reading the included essays in the manual, the rule book. I thought that the theme came through. The theme really informed the gameplay design, and it got me interested in the subject matter more. My next point that I thought was cool for this game on my first impression, something that actually I didn't expect to blow me away, were these little squares, the little chits. I thought the fact that you orient them at like a diamond instead of a square was really novel and really cool. I know that sounds very silly. I know, like, hey, you played this strategy game about being a wiener selling opium to the Chinese. What did you take away from it? Well, it uses diamonds instead of squares in many cases. Was something I took away. And that's not a slight. It's not to say there's nothing else I like about this game, and that was the one thing I like. Obviously, I like more stuff. I thought it was really novel, lining up the counters as diamonds instead of squares. A little thing, but I thought it was really cool. Okay, so those are some of my positive first impressions of An Infamous Traffic. Some things that I wasn't too sure about. And again, a lot of these, for the record, my positive impressions also can change with more plays. My impressions on the game initially could be wrong, either way, either positive or negative. My negative impressions are, I wasn't too sure exactly when I should be investing in opium or merchants or fleets versus the other things. It was hard to tell, other than they all complete a supply chain, it was hard for me to figure out the strengths and weaknesses of each individual one. And so that led to me often just kind of picking what I could place right now. Instead of saying, a fleet will benefit me in a few turns for these reasons, I would just pick whatever I could potentially place in a go-around. And again, I'm new, flying by the seat of my pants then. I'm sure that'll change as I am able to kind of digest more about this game. But immediately, it just felt like a crapshoot. I also had a bit of trouble unseating market leaders. So whoever has the most of one of the three types of enterprises is considered the market leader. The key thing there is you cannot undersell market leaders. You can't undercut their prices. So if someone has the opium market leader marker, and they have a bunch of opium out there for value 3, I can't do anything about that. It's gonna sit there, and they're always gonna be controlling that opium. What I found was that 2 players that just focused on one thing ended up being the 2 that were contending to win the game at the end. One person held the market leader for opium, one held the market leader for fleets all game. And I wanted to unseat that, but they were so far ahead of me in those things that I would have to spend several turns just investing in fleets and killing my revenue, or investing in opium and killing my revenue, just to equal them and break their hold. And then it's less helping me and more hurting them, which it wasn't something I felt like was the right move. Maybe as I play more, those things will open up to me, but immediately it felt hard. I don't want to say runaway leader, but it felt hard to unseat people that were in positions of power. Another thing I noticed that I wasn't super keen on, I liked it at first, but the more I think about it, the less maybe I like it, is the little prize counters that give you victory points. There are obviously a fixed number of them, right? You can't produce a game with an infinite number of pieces that have different denominations on them. But at the end of the game, it was kind of clear who was going to do what. The last turn almost felt like a throwaway. I know sometimes like 18xx games can kind of fall into that sort of pool as well, but I felt that here too, in a much shorter game, maybe not a huge deal, but it was a little, I don't want to say disappointing because the end felt good, but it felt, my guess is that over time I will start to dislike the end of the game a little more. I've seen some people online offer the idea of just printing out another sheet of these things, or even just another few counters. So there's a little bit of uncertainty when it comes to the last turn. You don't know exactly if there's gonna be, for sure, a 3, a -1, and a 0 in here. Because maybe all the chits won't be in play. So it's something I might try after a few more games. I'll see how I feel. I'll probably keep it as is for right now. I keep looking over here because I've got all the pieces over here, just to my left. But yeah, the prize distribution, the distribution was fine, but the fact that you're always gonna use all of them felt a little bit underwhelming. Cool, so that's kind of my off-the-cuff first impressions of An Infamous Traffic. And I'm hoping to get this game out again soon. This was a really fun game, and I think everyone I played with enjoyed it as well. I'd be curious to try it with 5. I'd also be curious to try it with 3. We played with 4 again, and that felt like a good number. I could see 5 being good as well. Maybe 3 has too few people. Everyone can kind of dominate one of the 3 markets, I imagine. But yeah, so if you enjoyed this, check out my website at phasingplayer.com. I put all my videos up there, as well as stuff that I write, and any audio exclusive stuff I record, I put up there. I appreciate it, and I would say go enjoy some opium. I think it's illegal in most places where you might be watching it. It's also not super great for you. But maybe go enjoy like a poppy seed muffin or a poppy seed bagel. I'm in Chicago here. I enjoyed a Chicago style hot dog earlier, which has poppy seeds on the bun. So I feel like me and the East India Company, we're kindred spirits here. I really feel like a strong connection, and hopefully you will too.